Hello and welcome to another edition of Tech Launch in the News. Let's get into it. We're going to dive right in today by taking a look at how the crypto wallet in this article is asserted as the Web3 identity. So it says here that essentially in Web2, identities were commonly linked to email and social media accounts. And so for Web3, the assertion is that this will probably be crypto wallets. Pretty interesting assertion. And it goes on and talks about the history of the internet and how you had Web 1, Web 2, and now Web 3 and some of the different timelines. The key takeaway that I'll point out here is that they're saying that virtually all aspects of the internet as we know it are ripe for decentralization. Chat and messaging service are private and encrypted, browsing is incognito, and transactions happen between individual bank accounts, albeit mediated by an intermediary. These are all signs that point to a system that is user controlled and caters to the individual rather than to the collective. And so you can see that this data economy and industrialization chart is implying that you effectively have this massive data economy that is ripe to be transitioned into this concept of really having Web3 as a jumping off point. So again, this kind of picture of evolution of the web and what's gone on. You can see some pretty interesting data around the timeline for when some of these technologies came out and when they were actually realized. Ultimately, they say that in this new space, a person's crypto wallet will be the key to their establishing a presence in the metaverse. From serving as an entryway into games to helping them build NFT collections to allowing them to do business online. And that may be a progression that we end up seeing, a practical progression from gaming and NFTs into business. Crypto wallets will be connected to everything users already do on the internet and in every online activity yet to come. And this will probably be in niche markets that you can take advantage of. And that's really one of the big things we want you to be looking at when you're going through some of these different articles with me, is this idea of where can you position yourself in front of this trend and how can you monitor the trend to make sure it's actually going as quickly or as effectively as promised or planned. A user's crypto wallet will function as a key, accessing all their domains, real estate, NFTs, and other virtual properties. This is the panacea ideal scenario potential. Should they lose that key, and this is really important, we've heard a lot of people losing their keys and losing everything, they'll have to wait until its term expires to renew it, is the assertion. So that said, the wallet will be so integral to everyone's online identity that a total loss is unlikely to happen, and that there are companies currently working on solutions to combat such losses. So effectively keeping everything backed up in a vault that could possibly be recovered with other forms of identity. And that's probably one of the most pragmatic things. If you think about it, that's how a lot of identity verification occurs today. Now, finally, one of the things that this article goes into is how a lot of big companies that are on Web 2 technology today and really have that as their foundational underpinning aspects, they will not just disappear overnight, but rather they will transition progressively into this Web3 platform. And so the fundamental takeaway here is that these changes will ultimately result in immutable proof of identity on the blockchain. That's really what this article summarizes to. And that's a great way for you to think about this in its simplest form. Immutable meaning it's unchangeable, and it's essentially this proof of identity so that you've got it leveraging blockchain to be unchangeable for identity. Very, very interesting stuff. Let's take a look at the next article now. Okay, this article is simply saying that with the crypto freeze or winter that's going on right now, the Web3 industry is in a perceived downtrend. In a lot of ways, it tactically is. And you can go through and see some of the market capitalization challenges. This is Bitcoin and how big of a hit it took in this most recent downturn. And essentially, this transition to Web3, though, according to this article, is imminent but dependent on a catalyst in order to proliferate it. So just like you see with AI and machine learning and how those have augmented certain industries and become more and more prevalent because of that, this is the same thing. There really needs to be a catalyst to proliferate it. a crypto winter can undoubtedly be considered a significant catalyst as it affords Web3 projects downtime wherein they can focus on scalability and sustainability. So they're actually taking this downtime and this winter as a positive. And they're saying projects leading the blockchain space were committed to building and enhancing their products despite this big downtrend. And that projects that offer utility succeed, while those that are fundamentally flawed, overhyped, and non-utilitarian will end up failing. So this is kind of a good thing to weed all of those projects out that were just hype. And then finally, this is the type of opportunity that we should seek, they're saying. Projects that are groundbreaking and scalable infrastructure that will drive the next evolution of the digital asset ecosystem. So this cleansing of the system of all of the hype, really getting rid of anything that isn't solid, but then doubling down during this time, as opposed to just malaise and lack of consideration for Web3. It should be a time to double down on it, but focus on the fundamentals that are going to stand the test of time. Could not agree more with that concept, but what exactly are those fundamentals? And if you look at it, they are pretty clear based on the data. And of course, that's our goal, is to go over that during these in the news sessions. Let's take a look though at what this article talks about with 11 ways that companies need to prepare for Web3 and decentralization. What are some of those key standing the test of time foundations? So again, this is an emphasis on what Web3 is to start out and how it will give users control over their data. And then it goes into this group of 11 members of the Forbes Technology Council and how they share essentially how Web3 is going to help make major changes across the internet. And I've summarized some of the key points. I would like for you to think of this as these are some of the key tenets that these folks are seeing that will probably stand the test of time. So how can you utilize this within your business and within your specific scenario right now? Essentially, robust, secure access for users, democratizing and decentralizing data. That's a constant theme that you're going to continue to see. Keeping an eye on decentralization and specifically decentralized finance as a really key specific niche that is getting augmented right now is DeFi. So are there revolutions and resources within DeFi that you can personally contribute to and take advantage of with Web3? One of the other things that's often overlooked is the ability to do good and to focus on benefiting society with the technology. And this can actually, as long as it's true and you're genuine about it, this can be a massive marketing play, because if you are transparent about these good intentions, then you can get the entire community within your niche and possibly beyond to be very supportive and generous toward your business and helping it get a lot of marketing, if not a lot of growth, from just having goodwill about what your vision and your mission is with your business. Getting ready for trust through cryptography, not infrastructure. So this idea is really important. The idea is building an architecture that anticipates and accepts the inevitability of a relatively centralized client-server relationship, but uses cryptography, not infrastructure, to distribute trust. So the idea here is that you essentially, as they're saying, you have this peer-to-peer capability and this centralization of the resources, not necessarily physically centralized, but essentially everyone has access to them. But the trust is contained. It's essentially containerizing the data security so that whenever this data is roaming around this centralized environment, it doesn't have to worry about the trust of that environment. Really, really interesting. Definitely a powerful foundational element. Now, this is also a similar concept. It's talking about planning to invest in edge computing and how this new model, Web3, will require planning and investing in edge computing in peer-to-peer, private, guaranteed delivery so that new data models and applications can deliver their value without poor performance. So you have this idea of distributed trust, and then you also have this idea of validation. And you can really see this in a lot of pub/sub models, publish and subscribe models, and being able to leverage this peer-to-peer and guaranteed delivery using pub sub type of models. But essentially, that needs to be brought into a mature delivery mechanism within Web3. Being prepared to embrace automations, many routine operations that can be automated with no drawbacks. And this is similar to what you see within other spaces that are early in their adoption, is augmenting really manual tasks that don't have to be manual. So they're talking about recurring financial operations and task management and automating some of those through Web3. Multi-cloud is another interesting aspect. So this is talking about virtualizing the data and getting it so that you can have different regions where the data resides physically separate from each other, but key information can be shared across that boundary. So you may have a jurisdictional boundary or legal boundary for different countries in particular, and having them essentially control that data and what does and doesn't get in and out, but still having the major benefits of Web3 within that controlled environment. So this is kind of an interesting thought process. It kind of goes against the grain of Web3, but I think it's a pragmatic realization that some countries just won't allow that full decentralization. Evaluating your cybersecurity threat profile. This is pretty interesting too. So hyper-automated AI and machine learning enabled zero trust architecture that's essentially on the offense, looking for any inward attacks and constantly vigilant. And in particular, zero trust with anyone who is trying to take advantage of access to this Web3 decentralization. They're talking about taking advantage even of quantum computing architectures to future-proof that move. So really, really intense focus on cybersecurity here. Couldn't agree more though. If you look at the Achilles heel of Web3, there has been over $10 billion, $2 billion this year in hacking. That's literally money that's been lost since Web3 has been out. $10 billion. Make sure your team understands decentralization. Finally, the big thing here is making sure your team is up to speed. One of the best ways to do that is focusing around privacy and different legislation. And then once your team understands those rules, then they can see how Web3 can actually mechanically help implement those rules and respect those rules, really by the nature of how Web3 was built. And then the disadvantages, being able to, again, learn as a team what the pros and cons are and know what those disadvantages are with Web3. There absolutely are disadvantages to Web3, but there are a lot of strengths that are going to most likely outweigh those disadvantages. Okay, let's take a look at the final article here. Okay, so this article is talking about how Web3 has much bigger challenges than the crypto winter. And essentially, this contributor has a lot of experience and is directly working in this arena. And they talk about how the blockchain gaming sector has already broken the 5 billion mark with investments in 2022 compared to 4.2 billion in 2021. So even though there's a winter here, it's really not necessarily evident yet in these numbers. But the gaming industry, the Web3 gaming industry, mustn't take this as a sign that crypto winter will be little more than a cold snap. And if it hopes to be more than a gaming niche, Web3 gaming cannot look the same as it does today when it emerges from its wintry hibernation. And one of the big challenges with Web3, especially around gaming, is it just really assumes that there will be financial incentives in order to drive a lot of the behavior, as opposed to the value of the platform itself, in this case, gaming, actually driving the interaction. So the blockchain gaming play that succeeds with the average player, aka normies, will also become the biggest Web3 onboarder on Earth. So what he's saying here is that this framework of gaming and getting gaming to be heavily adopted is probably going to be a major driver, if not the major driver, to get Web3 adoption to start, to kind of break the glass ceiling and get Web3 really moving. And just going on, in order to do that, essentially he's saying that, we can enhance games with blockchain, creating a multifaceted offer that caters to and provides choice to gamers of all types, crypto natives, and everyone else in between. That's the holy grail of Web3. But one of the big things that stands in the way of this, if you think about it, is how we create a blockchain gaming platform that rivals the size and variety of Steam or the Apple App Store. And these are very mature platforms that are really just constantly building out massively successful games. And they are really an incubator for these successful games. There isn't a lot of similarity within the Web3 space. We essentially have walled gardens run by Web2 tech giants. And imagine what those platforms could look like when married with the key principles of Web3: transparency, decentralization, and community ownership. So the idea here is to retool the Web3 gaming platform. So to enable Web3 gaming to scale, we need to focus on making it cater to everyone with multiple ways of playing and engaging. And that needs to be within a small number of multifaceted ecosystems. And this is one of the key mechanical takeaways. These ecosystems need to be few and very deep and very capable, enabling them to bring together multiple games under one economy and one seamless user experience, avoiding the interoperability constraints of Web2 metaverse platforms, as he says. So this is really interesting stuff, because Web3, in order for it to get out of this, what may seem like a perpetually nascent stage, it really has to get the framework in place to have a major driver behind Web3 adoption. Gaming could absolutely be it. It's a great place to look to see what the state of progression may be and where the overall development and maturity of it is, so you can adapt quicker, or you can delay potentially or time some of your investment into Web3 based on how quickly this part of the space moves along. Thanks for watching this edition of Tech Launch in the News. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe so you can see more in the news resources. We also have complimentary masterclasses and other resources available to you on our website, www.gotechlaunch.com. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them in the comments section. And until next time, thanks for watching, and bye for now.